This is NBC 10 at Issue.
The Democrats' big win in the New Jersey governor's race made national headlines, but there was also a blue wave in one part of Pennsylvania. Bucks County went blue with Democrats winning key races. The county has 10,000 more registered Republicans than Democrats, but we saw town council and school boards swing toward Democratic candidates, and Democrats won both the sheriff's office and the district attorney's office.
Joining us now in studio is the man who won that election for Bucks County District Attorney, Democrat Joe Kahn. Welcome to NBC 10 at Issue. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk about this. This is significant. First of all, a Democrat winning in Bucks County for District Attorney. You're flipping this seat. And I want to talk a little politics, but first I want to talk about the new job. What are residents in Bucks County going to see? What are the first things that they're going to see different with you as DA?
I mean, I think residents are going to see that all of the good work that's been done by that office over the years, prosecuting gun violence and homicide and drunk driving and child abuse, we're going to continue to build on that to keep people safe. But there's so much work that it's time for that office to start taking on to protect our environment, to protect workers, to protect consumers. And so we're going to move that office into the 21st century. And we're going to renew our mission and our commitment to justice and public safety in Bucks County in a way that folks haven't seen before.
How are you going to handle the issue of bail, cash bail? That's something that has been debated locally, statewide, and nationally. How are you going to handle it as DA?
You know, I served about a mile from here at the U.S. Attorney's Office for 10 years. I was a federal prosecutor, and like every federal prosecutor across the country, no matter if they were appointed by a Republican like I was or a Democrat, they approached these questions the same way. When we arrested someone, brought them into court, we asked two questions. Is this person dangerous? Is this person going to run? And if the answer was yes, it didn't matter how much cash they had to buy themselves out of trouble. We were going to recommend that they stay in custody before their trial. And if the answer was no, then we'd figure out what we need to do to let them out. And there's no reason we can't have an approach to protecting the community when we look at questions of bail when people are arrested in Bucks County. We have a constitutional amendment in Pennsylvania that allows us to hold dangerous people in custody without any bail. And so I'm going to make sure that we're approaching these questions more thoughtfully and that we're doing the hard work to protect our community from dangerous offenders who might have cash but don't deserve to be released and sent home.
Would you like to see a change in how bail is handled in Pennsylvania and whether cash bail is used?
Yeah, I would like to see Pennsylvania move to a system that's more like what we have in the federal system, where U.S. attorneys' offices across the country for decades now have been approaching bail just exactly like I said. Should this person be in or should they be out? Not are they rich or are they poor? The law in Pennsylvania makes it a lot of work to try and get close to that result. So I think it would be great if our legislature made the law a little bit better, a little bit more like the federal system. In the meantime, I'm going to expect my prosecutors, my attorneys, to do the hard work, to go to court, to look at every case individually and not focus on how much money someone has in their bank account, but focus on whether we're dealing with someone who's dangerous or someone who's going to run. And we're going to make sure we do the work, whether it takes motions in court, filing appeals if we don't like the result, to make sure that we've done everything we can do to protect Bucks County.
When we look at at this race, it happened in an off year. We can look at it as
there are no off years anymore.
I know. People say there's no off years in elections, but for voters, there wasn't a huge race at the top of the ticket that got their attention: a governor's race, a Senate race, a presidential race. So it was a little harder to get people's attentions and get them to the polls. There was a Supreme Court retention race statewide. But what do you think made the difference in Bucks County, a place where Republicans had taken the edge in voter registrations, but Democrats came out on top, not just in your race, but others as well?
Well, I think the first thing to your question is it wasn't just about Democrats. I mean, this was not an off-year election in Bucks County. If you look at the voter turnout, we were nearly 50% turnout. You don't see that kind of turnout in some counties when you have presidential or statewide offices on the ballot. And so this was an election that really mattered to people. And I think it's because we're in a moment right now where people are really fed up, right, with the fact that government is just out of touch. It is not interested in solving their problems. And so folks looked at my race and other races that we had on the ballot as really important offices because these are the kinds of offices that should be showing up for everyday people. And so in Bucks County, hitting almost 50% voter turnout wasn't just Democrats getting to the polls. It was Democrats, it was Republicans, it was independents. And we didn't just win Democrats. We won Republicans, we won independents. We won all kinds of places in Bucks County that normally wouldn't vote for a Democrat, but this year overwhelmingly voted for me and my running mates.
You have a unique perspective because you've also run statewide, so you can kind of look at the entire map. What did you see when you looked at it? I know you were probably largely focused on your race, but I'm sure you were paying attention. What did you see when you looked at the Supreme Court retention race results, where Democrats did very, very well? They got people out.
Yeah, I think you saw overwhelmingly people were rejecting this idea that we should inject politics into this question of whether or not a judge should keep their job.
There was politics in it, though. Certainly Republicans were saying vote no, Democrats were saying vote yes.
But this was the first time that you ever had a whole political campaign that was organized around spending millions of dollars trying to politicize these questions. Normally, judges would be retained based on their merit, and overwhelmingly judges in Pennsylvania have been retained, whether it's at the Supreme Court level or the common pleas level. But you saw an unprecedented effort to try and politicize this process. You saw millions of dollars pouring into certainly this part of Pennsylvania with false information about who these justices were. And I think you saw places in Pennsylvania where people actually voted for Republicans, but they still voted to retain the justices and retain the judges that were up because they didn't like this idea of politicizing retention elections. They were never supposed to be political. And so my perspective being in Bucks County is that that's the same perspective voters in Bucks County had as well. A lot of the issues that came up, whether it was my race for district attorney, whether it was our sheriff's race, was the idea of getting politics out of good government, getting politics out of public safety. And Bucks County is really a microcosm of Pennsylvania. You know, we're rural, we're urban, and we're suburban. We have all of the things that I think reflect Pennsylvania, and it's one of the reasons we've always been a bellwether and really a swing county in this Commonwealth.
I covered the New Jersey governor's race as well. President Trump was a big factor, a big talking point in that campaign. Things were a little bit different in Pennsylvania, but do you think that President Trump and his administration played a role from the judges on all the way down to your race?
Yeah, I think two things. I think number one, it's one of the reasons that I became the first Democrat since 1891 to win this office, because I think folks were just fed up with the Republican Party. And I think they were looking for public officials and candidates to make the case that they were going to make their lives better. And across the board, we've seen Republican elected officials basically sending the message, we're going to look out for Donald Trump. In Bucks County, that's not good enough. It's not good enough that people have always voted for a Republican for DA and for other offices. We had to make the case that we were going to make your lives better. And so in my case, I looked at an environmental disaster that happened in our community where jet fuel was seeping into the drinking water of families in one of our neighborhoods. And the response those folks got from the DA's office is, it isn't really something for the DA to get involved in. And I think that voters expected better. And they expected folks like me to show up at their homes, to listen to their stories, and have an answer for them about how we could have an office that's truly going to keep them safe. And that's, I think, what's different this year, is I think voters are showing up for elections this year. They do expect government to show up for them. And I think the Democrats are successfully making that argument in 2025.
What do you think it means for 2026?
I think if the Republicans don't get their act together, I think you're going to see not just a blue wave, but you're going to see a blue tsunami, because it wasn't just that we won in traditionally Democratic areas in Bucks County. If you look at the voter registration across Bucks County, we won every precinct where Democrats had the advantage, and we won half the precincts where Republican had the advantage. We are making our case to people who are open-minded, who are ready for something new. And I think that we are continuing to see this dysfunction in Washington. We're seeing this dysfunction in Harrisburg. And until the Republican Party gets the message that you've got to stop carrying water for Donald Trump, and you've got to start looking out for the rights of everyday people, I think we're going to continue to see people reject and turn away from the Republican message and be open to supporting and voting for Democrats.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for now. Okay. Joe Kahn, the district attorney-elect for Bucks County, congratulations on your race, and thanks for being here.
Thanks so much, Lauren. Great to be here.